And a very good evening to you, and welcome to Politics 101 on a Wednesday evening. I'd like to welcome everyone down to the show. It's that time, our midweek edition. Welcome all of you who are joining us from Guyana, those of you who are coming to us from the wider Caribbean. Good evening to you. Good evening to you in Antigua. Good evening to you in Antigua and Barbuda and the rest of the Caribbean. Welcome to Politics 101. Good evening, a good night, and perhaps morning, because it's now a little past midnight in England, the United Kingdom. I didn't realize it was that late at night, 5 hours ahead of Guyana. So it's midnight there in England. Well, just past midnight. It's now Thursday morning. So welcome to you. Welcome to you wherever you're joining us from in the United Kingdom. And those of you in other parts of Europe, in France in particular, welcome to Politics 101. Please share the link. If everyone shares the link, then we are able to maximize our audience. And some of you are already here. So welcome down. Good evening, Dunsford. I recognize Dunsford is from Mocha, Arcadia. Jennifer, Claudette, Virginia, welcome. Virginia, welcome. Good evening to you, Virginia. Welcome to Virginia, welcome. Karen, welcome. All the welcomes are all out tonight. Welcome to Politics 101. Denise Booker is here with us as usual. Loyal 101. Andrew Mingo, welcome to you, Sandra. Please you all share the link. We're on tonight. And we are going to continue our conversation. Denise Samuels, good evening to you. Good evening to you, wherever you're joining us from. Those of you joining us from the Washington, D.C. area, special welcome, special good evening to you. And we are going to talk tonight on the issues that are affecting us. So please share the link and let everyone know that we are here. Good evening to you in Linden, the wonderful people of Linden, Wisma, Mackenzie. Good evening to you. Good evening to you on the quarantine. Welcome to Politics 101. Not forgetting our friends down there in the south of the United States. Particularly in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia. Some of you are there in South Carolina, neighboring state. Texas, I know, is usually in the house. Good evening to Mr. Robertson, Thomas Robertson, down there in Georgia. Good evening to you. Good evening to my friend Aubrey Paul in Texas. Good evening to you, South Carolina, Mr. Morgan, Osea Morgan in South Carolina. Good evening. Good evening to you, Mr. Edward David, Mr. Clifton Stewart. Welcome. Please, you all share the link and let everyone know that we are here. We continue to do battle. Something caught my attention in the papers this morning, and that is that members of the Public Accounts Committee in Parliament put out a statement, and it seems that over the last 2 years, 22 meetings have been cancelled of the Public Accounts Committee. 22 meetings. You know, the PPP altered, changed the standing orders for that Public Accounts Committee, which is chaired by the opposition, German Figuera, sorry. And they've missed 22 meetings for the last 2 years. And because they changed the standing orders to make it mandatory that at least 2 members of the government side must be there for a quorum. And so they continue to absent themselves from the meetings. And so the Public Accounts Committee is not able to do its work. We understand there's a backlog going back to 2000 and 2019. My goodness. And that is an oversight committee. We're going to talk a little bit about that. How about that meeting between the leader of the opposition and the president? Joint statement on Venezuela. Joint statement on Venezuela. Of course, the Venezuela issue continues to be a big issue. Good evening. Good evening to you, Larry Crawford, Keith Semple. And Keith is a regular. I remember the cricketer Keith Semple played for Guyana. He captained Guyana, played a couple of matches for the West Indies. Not sure if it's the same Keith Semple, you know. Sometimes people share the same names. I know there are a few David Hines around. Welcome to you, Mr. Semple. Donna Liverpool. Donna is always joining us from, I think Donna is joining us from Suriname, French Guyana. Good evening to you. Good night to you in England. Please share the link. We are going to be talking about a few issues here tonight. Of course, we see Chevron is now partnering with Hess in that very profitable oil block there. 30% of the shares of that oil block. So lots happening on that front. The PPP, of course, is well known for its bad governance, and we're going to zero in on that tonight. We're going to zero in on that tonight. So please share the link. I'll be back in shortly. We take a light moment as usual. You know, it was quite a thing when the young Prince Harry there from the monarchy, when he married a black woman, changing up everything there, and bringing the issue of race and so on as far as the monarchy, and that was quite a development. I remember it there. Good evening, Thomasina Ben. Good evening, Shelley. Diane is watching from Washington, D.C., and that's a place that I know quite well, live there, and my people are still there, and I go there quite often. Annette Cummins, good evening. Rosa, Mary Albert, Maureen Williams, good evening to all of you. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, please share the link. When we come back, we will begin to talk about the issues that we mentioned tonight.
tell her.
You, that's your grandmother.
Oh, all right. Grandmummy.
Yes, darling. What is it?
Megan has something.
I don't have it.
Megan and myself have something to tell you.
Well, get on with it.
We want to leave the monarchy.
What? But why would you want to leave all of this, darling?
Well, Grandmummy, you wouldn't understand.
Philip, come on! No!
Grandmummy!
Philip! Go ahead and take care of her. Go ahead. Help her connect the dots. When Sparrow did sing about the white meat and thing, man them start to fret like he never eat a dark meat yet. But if ever you lack the understanding of once you go black, in the pages of history will document Harry's testimony. You know why? The prince gave up his money. The prince gave up his throne. The prince gave up his power. Why? Just for dark meat alone. The family goes sour. The queen, she might sin she soul, but the mother go proud when he's singing out loud. What? Dark meat to the world. Harry, tell them once you go black. Tell them you'll never go back. Tell them once you go black, you'll never go back. The haters on social media say that Harry will soon regret, but they will never understand why he leave it, because they never eat a black meat yet. Harry, tell oh Harry, oh let's say it. Go Harry, go Harry, go Harry. Harry messed with the bride when he introduced his bride. The queen, she wasn't happy. She was like, what nonsense is this, Harry? It was a big joke. Harry near make the woman catch a stroke when he proclaimed, yes I do, to a woman of a darker hue. So with that, the prince gave up his money, and then he kick away his throne. He tell him he ain't want no power. Why? Just for dark meat alone. The family always sour. The queen, she might sin she soul, but the mother go proud when they singing out loud. Melanin to the world. Harry tell once you go black, never, you'll never go back. Never. Once you go black, never, you'll never go back. The queen say, Harry, my grandson, you was always happy with the rules that we set, but she can't feel what Harry is feeling because she never eat a black meat yet. Hey! Harry tell him, everybody sing, go Harry. What? Go Harry. Louder. Go Harry. The truth, listen, it's Harry who made the call. He said, not my wife at all. It still makes him shudder, the way the people treat his mother. So Harry decided to live his life colorblind. Well, he raised some eyebrows for sure when they saw his Rasta mother-in-law. So king gave up his money, the prince gave up his throne. The prince said want no power. Why? Just for dark meat alone. The family done sour, and the queen she might sing she soul, but the mother go proud when he singing out loud. Yes, dark meat to the world. Harry said, what? You'll never go back. Never, never. Once you go black, you'll never go back. Harry brother say that he's appalled, disappointed, confused and upset, but he cannot relate, so he married a kid, so he never eat a black pig yet. Never. Hey, go Harry, louder. Go Harry, share my husband on. Go Harry, go Harry. Inside the short time in the palace, he enduring all the malice. Some men want to say it, but half of them who complaining was racist. They thought that Harry wouldn't have gone as fast to marry, but the power of this black beauty making go down on not one but on the two knees. So the prince gave up his money, and then he kick away his throat. He telling me he want no power. Why? Just for dark meat alone. The family still in shock, and the queen in pure misery. But the mother go proud, cause Harry is now contributing to black history. Harry said, once you go black, never, you'll never go back. Never, never. Once you go black, you'll never go back. Harry say, my love, pack your clothes, let we ship out with no regret, cause these people can't grasp why it's so finger licking, because they never eat a black meat yet. Harry, go Harry, what we say? Go Harry, go Harry, love you.
Go Harry. Hey, go Harry. Terry Lyons. Megan, my dear, go Harry. Doing it as only the Calypsonian can do. Only in Calypso you can put to music a story like that. A story like that. Terry Lyons, the daughter of Super Blue. The old timers will know him as Blue Boy. And a couple of his daughters, Terry, and there's another one, Faye-Ann Lyons. But Terry won the crown in 2020 with that Calypso, Go Harry. Megan, my dear, is the name of the Calypso. And you remember Sparrow sang one a long time ago, Philip, my dear. There's a man in your bedroom, the black man who went in the queen bedroom. Hey, I thought it was you. He looked like you, but he bigger than you and stronger than you. Philip, my dear, and now Terry Ann Lyons. Megan, my dear, bringing to the forefront the question of race and empowering Black women, lifting up the Black woman, You know, once you go Black, you don't go back, and empowering the Black woman in song, and as I said, bringing to the fore the question of race, and doing as we do in music. You know, Sparrow again sang "Never Eat a White Meat Yet." Well, Terry Ann is saying, well, you know, there is relish also for for blackness. Megan, my dear, Megan, my dear, the Calypso art form, our gift to the world, a music that developed on the slave plantation as a form of resistance and has come through in time. Of course, our newer musical song, reggae, itself comes out of calypso. Reggae, a combination of calypso and mento, which is the folk music of Jamaica, and rhythm and blues. Our new music, reggae emerging in the 1950s, first as ska, and then transitioning to rocksteady, and then from rocksteady into reggae, and then laterally dancehall. And it seems as though now we're going back to some roots reggae again. The music constantly evolving and constantly moving. The Hispanics have their reggaeton, and high life in Africa is itself influenced by calypso and reggae. So we brought with us from West Africa the kaiso, which over time became calypso, and now we are giving back to Africa the music created in the diaspora. Music has always been a part of us, and the calypso is the modern music of the English-speaking Caribbean in the way that jazz and the blues are the modern musics of Black America, always enriching the world with our song. Good evening. Please share the link. Please share the link. It's good to be alive. It's good to be Guyanese. It's quite a time to be alive because we are seeing all the contradictions playing out in our country. Good evening, Naomi Randolph. Good evening to you, Sean Rodney. Good evening to you, and welcome to Politics 101. The whole question of good governance is critical. Is really critical to Guyana. In this period of oil and gas, enormous wealth coming to our country. The best safeguard we have is if we have a democratic form of governance to ensure the proper management of the oil and gas resources as our country moves to another level. Ironically, the coming of oil has brought with it not an enhancement of democracy, but a retarding of democracy. I mentioned that the Public Accounts Committee, which is the committee in Parliament that is charged with overseeing government spending. That committee is chaired by the opposition thanks to some constitutional modifications 20 years ago, where the sectoral committees would be chaired by the opposition. And so the opposition is chairing that important committee. The National Assembly itself is the branch of government that oversees the executive branch. It's an oversight. The legislature is an oversight branch of government. It makes laws because it's the legislature, but it also serves as an oversight of the executive, especially executive spending. As you know, all monies are disbursed by the National Assembly. When the executive branch, when the government wants money, it has to go to the legislature. The legislature controls the purse strings. And so it is a very important branch of government, you know, the checks and balances, where the executive branch is supposed to be checked by the legislature and the judiciary. The thing is, with the winner-take-all Westminster system, what happens is that the party that wins controls the executive, but it also controls the legislature, the National Assembly. It uses its majority to control the National Assembly. So in many regards, the winner-take-all Westminster system really allows the same party to control two branches of government. And so, in a sense, you're asking the winning party to oversight itself. In the first place, they are members of the executive branch, members of the cabinet, who are also members of the legislature. So there's no separation of powers. There's a fusion of the power. In the United States, for example, there's a separation of power. If you are going to become a member of the cabinet, you have to resign your seat in Congress. They have what is called strict separation of powers. In the Westminster system, there's no strict separation of powers. And so the ruling party gets its way in both branches of government. Of course, the understanding is that you may be a member of the ruling party and a member of the legislature, but if you see something is going wrong in the executive, you will vote against it. That hardly happens. It doesn't happen very much at all, very often. The last time, in a really big way, was in Barbados, and that was a long time ago, way back in the early 90s, when some backbenchers of the Democratic Labour Party voted against their own party. Mr. Erskine Sandiford, who just died the other day, and he was going to be toppled by his backbenchers. He called an election rather than being toppled. So that was an instance in which members of one party disagreed with their own party and its behavior in government, in particular the Prime Minister. And they were about to move a vote of no confidence. The Prime Minister called an election. The DLP lost. Owen Arthur came to power and stayed in power, the Barbados Labour Party, for almost 2 decades. We had a no confidence vote the other day. But that no confidence vote was part of regime change. I gave a guest lecture at the University of Guyana a few days ago, and one of the students asked me whether the no confidence vote was a vote based on class or a vote based on race. And it was a very, very perceptive question. Because if you are going to vote against your own party, you have to have some good reason to vote against your own party to bring down that party in government. And Mr. Charan Das' argument was that sugar workers were neglected. And that was the reasoning for his no confidence vote. Well, if we look at the sugar issue, what the coalition government was doing, it was reforming the sugar industry. As we know, sugar bleeds a lot from the rest of the economy because we are producing sugar way above the price in the world market. We are producing sugar at about 40 cents per pound. Sugar is selling at 12 cents per pound, you know, in some instances, 20 cents per pound. So we are subsidizing sugar. And when we subsidize the sugar, we are really subsidizing those who are buying the sugar. Because when we sell the sugar to England or America at 20 cents per pound, when we are producing it for 40 cents, then that 20 cents per pound, we are subsidizing the buyers. And so what the coalition government was doing was trying to say, look, we want the sugar industry not to be a drain on the rest of the economy. We want the sugar industry to be profitable. And that is happening all over the Caribbean. A lot of the Caribbean countries have diversified out of sugar. Because for a long time, the price of sugar on the world market had declined as the world discovered new sweeteners. Sugar was no longer profitable. Jamaica got out of sugar very early, and they diversified into bauxite and bananas and tourism. A lot of the Eastern Caribbean countries diversified into bananas and tourism. Trinidad, Barbados, Guyana, and to some extent St. Kitts remained in sugar. St. Kitts diversified out of sugar about 20 years ago. Barbados has right-sized its sugar industry, so the sugar is not a drain on the rest of the Barbadian economy as it is in Guyana. Trinidad has also trimmed its industry. So Guyana is the only place in our English-speaking Caribbean where sugar is such a drain on the rest of the economy. It's subsidized. And obviously subsidized for political reasons. The PPP support base is in the sugar industry. And so the PPP is reluctant to do anything about sugar. And the coalition came in and decided it was going to take the bull by the horns. And this was before oil. And it wasn't getting rid of sugar, it was trimming the sugar, right-sizing it so that it can become profitable. Now, where the coalition went wrong was not in the policy itself, but it was an insensitivity to race. Given our racial situation in Guyana, if you are going to make a big change in an industry that is dominated by one race, you have to take into consideration the racial blowback that you're going to get. And I don't think the coalition thought that through. You know, because our government, especially on our side of the aisle, PNC governments and the coalition government, a lot of times they don't think race is a big deal. And that is a mistake. Remember when Mr. Hoyt right-sized the public service on the advice of the IMF, where, you know, a lot of public servants were retrenched, knocked off. Mr. Hoyt didn't suffer for it much because it was a black government displacing black workers. And we know that those black workers, they took to the rest of the Caribbean with their suitcases and they introduced trading, a new dimension to the Guyanese economy. And a lot of people don't give them credit for keeping the Guyanese economy afloat during that period. So much for the thing that African Guyanese can't do business. That business venture, that entrepreneur venture by the traders is a significant development in Guyana. And people do not credit it. They do not give it a lot of credit because, we're into this thing that, doing business is an ethnic thing, a racial thing. So Indians could do business and Africans can't do business. So when Africans engage in a big business venture as the trading and they succeeded, they did well, we don't give them credit because in our heads, they can't do business. So when they do business, successful business, we don't bring ourselves to give them credit. Any perceptive government would have developed that new aspect of the economy, would have invested in those small businesses because they were small businesses. And the government could have developed that, and that would have become a very stable and very important aspect of our economy. And it would have empowered African Guyanese. But I give that example to say that Hoyt knocked off public servants on the advice of the IMF and got away with it because he was a black leader knocking off black people. But here was Granger, a black leader, knocking off Indian people for the good of the country, for the good, because it was about doing the right thing by sugar. But you had to take into consideration the racial blowback. And at the coalition taking that into consideration, it would have operated differently. It would have done the same thing differently. So when Sharon Das says that he brought down the government, he voted against his own government because of what they did to the sugar workers, he was being disingenuous. Because ultimately, right-sizing sugar would be beneficial for sugar workers. Because it means that those who remain in sugar would be working for a profitable company, a profitable industry, generating its own profits. And that would mean better wages for the workers. And it wouldn't be a strain on the rest of the economy. And those who had to get out of sugar, they would have been trained to get into other aspects of the economy. And here we are, look at what the PPP is doing. It opened a training center at Port Morant, and it's training sugar workers to get into the oil industry. It is doing the same thing that the coalition intended to do. So Sharon Das could not argue that from a social class standpoint, the closing of some of the estate was economically bad for the workers. However, like I said, you could not knock off 4,000 Indian workers under an African-dominated government and don't expect to get a racial blowback. And so Sharon Das acted based on race, not on class. He acted based on race. He felt that Indian sugar workers were being knocked off by an African-dominated government. And so he brought down his own government because of that. I am arguing that if it were the PPP that was doing what the coalition did, there would not have been the same kind of response from the sugar workers and from people like Sharon Das. As I said, Hoy did it. Black people, of course, were vexed. They get knocked off. But it was their own government that did it. And so Sharon Das acted from a racial standpoint when he brought down the government. And this is a reality in countries like ours. A reality in countries like ours. That governments of one ethnic group have to be very careful about how you behave towards other ethnic groups. All governments have to be able to balance the competing demands of the ethnic groups. And what we have seen is that the PPP is not able to balance the competing demands. The coalition did a better job at balancing the demands, because the coalition, despite the fact that it was right-sizing the sugar industry, it pumped billions of dollars into the sugar industry. Billions of dollars. It was a black government pumping billions of dollars into an industry dominated by an ethnic group that didn't vote for it. And so Sharon Das acted from a racial standpoint, not from a class standpoint, as some are arguing. Because they're arguing that the coalition deliberately wanted to hurt Indians. And that was not so. The coalition's mistake was that it was insensitive to the racial realities of our country. And any government that pretends that race doesn't exist, they are in trouble, and they will make mistakes like that. The PPP is making the mistakes, but unlike the coalition, which did it innocently, the PPP is deliberately. If the PPP has taken the decisions, we are pressing ahead, and whether it affects Black people negatively or not, we don't care. That is the difference between the two. And so therefore we get back to Parliament, the National Assembly. We don't find that people of one party don't normally vote against their own party in Parliament. It means, therefore, the party that controls the executive controls the National Assembly. And I keep saying Parliament, but that's wrong. Parliament is the National Assembly plus the president. When the president goes to the National Assembly to address the National Assembly becomes the Parliament. That's the difference between National Assembly and Parliament, right? They're not the same thing. We use them interchangeably, but they're not the same thing. The National Assembly, as it stands, is controlled by the PPP with a one-seat majority. And it is using that one-seat majority to control the Parliament and to make the Parliament a rubber stamp, the National Assembly, a rubber stamp of the executive branch. Now, when they gave the chairmanship of those committees, the Public Accounts Committee and other sectoral committees, when they gave the chairmanship to the executive, to the opposition, it was a way to get the opposition to have some kind of influence in a National Assembly that they don't have a majority. And what the PPP did is to take away that device. It used its one-seat majority on the floor to change the standing orders. In a sense, violating the spirit of the Constitution. Because the Public Accounts Committee, the chairmanship was given to the opposition to bring about some kind of sharing of power. And the PPP used its one-seat majority to take that away. It's not a violation of the letter, because there's nothing in the law that says that the sectoral committee, the public accounts committee, should be chaired by what the quorum should be and all of that. So the PPP uses majority, change the rules, so you have to have 2 government members, and by doing so, it in effect took back the power that was given to the opposition, took it back. So now the committee doesn't meet. They've missed 22 meetings because the opposition members do not turn up. So the PPP violates the spirit of the law, the spirit of the Constitution. These were constitutional changes made 20 years ago. And it was done to empower the opposition. The PPP uses overall majority to take away that empowerment from the opposition. It didn't break any law, but it violated the spirit of the law, the spirit of the Constitution. And law is both letter and spirit. Both letter and spirit. So it's a serious breach by the PPP. In some other countries, that matter could have gone to court. And if a Thurgood Marshall was presiding over that court, he would have ruled against what the PPP did. Because Marshall's doctrine was that the court should be an instrument of expanding democracy, not taking away democracy. Expanding rights, not taking away rights. So there you are, you have the Public Accounts Committee. It's now toothless because the PPP has taken away the teeth. Another instance of the totalitarian nature of the PPP's governance. It takes away every little space that was granted to the opposition. In the winner-take-all system, the opposition has very little formal space. And the little formal space the PPP has taken it away in the last 3 years. And so the PPP has moved the pendulum towards dictatorship and autocracy. So we are normally critical of our parliamentarians on the opposition side. And I'm not saying to you all, don't be critical of them. I'm just trying to explain that they literally have no power in that institution. I hear people like Ravi Dev would say the opposition is not using, Ralph Ramkaran and others, I hear that too. The opposition is not using these committees. How are you going to use the committees to your benefit when the committees can't meet? And the reason they can't meet is because the government has used its power to prevent them from meeting. And a very important function, that is the oversight of government spending. One has to ask the question, why doesn't the PPP want the Public Accounts Committee to vet is spending? Does it have something to hide? We understand they're not even finished looking at the accounts of 2019. What about 2020, 21, 22? 23 is almost over. We are going to go to another election without the account, the spending of this government going through the vetting by the National Assembly. You see, when we talk about democracy and democratic government, these are the things that we have to point out. Guyana is not a democracy. It's not a functional democracy. It's a democracy in name only. We have elections, but the elections can be manipulated. We have sectoral committees in the National Assembly that are chaired by the opposition, but the committees are not meeting thanks to the government action. So I want you all to understand, when we say this government is not democratic, what we are talking about. Of course, there are countries where you don't have elections. We have elections. But the architecture, the rules for the elections are so crooked that the elections are really not elections. And I've been talking about this election thing because I know some of you are putting all your store in the next election, as if there's a magic with that next election. There's no magic with elections in Guyana, except the magic that parties do to put themselves in power. I said this morning on Brother Kidaki's program, we're talking about, the election, that if an election is called tomorrow, it will be a disaster for our country. We are not in a position to have credible elections in Guyana. If we go to an election where the two sides do not agree on the rules for the elections, we are opening this country to serious trouble. Because I tell you, the supporters of the now opposition are not going to take a second installment. That I know. So our cry is not for a new election. Our cry must be for new rules for election. We can't put the cart in front of the horse or the donkey. We cannot afford to go to a next election with the same rules, meaning the same voters list, the same lack of oversight. We cannot afford to go to an election again with that. So our battle cry must be for new election rules, not necessarily a new election. Let's see it about the business of the new rules. CARICOM, which helped to give the election to the PPP. However, in that report, it said GCOM is in no position to preside over a free and fair election. CARICOM said that. They gave the election to the PPP. But I said GCOM is in no position. Ambassador Lynch, as she was leaving, said that if we are going to have proper elections in 2025, we have to change the rules now. The assumption, therefore, by Ambassador Lynch is that the rules need to be changed. The three commissioners on the government side have said that the rules need to be changed. The GCOM is in no position to carry out an election. They said that before the local government election. We went to the local government election, and because it was a local government election, people did not put a lot of emphasis on the rules. For the opposition, it was about keeping the PPP from getting control of the municipalities, Linden, Georgetown, New Amsterdam, etc. And so the opposition didn't pay too much attention to the rules and the rigging that may have taken place. But when it comes to a general election, they're not going to do that. They are going to look at the rules. Dr. Henry Jeffrey has told us from about 2006, the PPP made a decision that given the demographic shifts, that Indians no longer had a built-in majority, the PPP decided that it had to find ways of getting votes. You could no longer guarantee the vote to come from a built-in majority. You're not going to get any substantive vote from the other side. A sprinkling of African Guyanese are going to vote for you, but the PPP is not stupid. They know that no critical mass of black people are going to vote for them. They tried to buy votes the other day and didn't do it. They didn't get to buy many. The few that they bought, look at the money they spent for it, and still they didn't get many. So if you're not going to get these crossover votes, there's no built-in Indian majority, then where are the votes coming from? And the answer to that occurred when something that doesn't happen anywhere in the world happened in 2020. The boxes were opened. You don't open ballot boxes before results are announced. You open the boxes after the results to do a forensic audit. That happened in 1997. In 1997, there was a forensic audit of the elections after the results were declared. Mr. Cross, Ulrich Cross, I think, from Trinidad, he came and he opened the boxes. This time, they agreed to open the boxes before the results. I am stressing that, and I may be the lone person who's stressing it, but I hope we will find out soon that it needs to be stressed. I know politicians are busy with other things, but I am stressing that. You do not open boxes before the results are announced. It's unconstitutional. But we opened the boxes. It was unconstitutional, but in doing that, we were able to educate ourselves about how the PPP went about, how they go about rigging. And that voters list, that padded voters list of over 200,000 votes. Now, of course, 200,000 people are not going to vote. The PPP is right about that. Not because you have 200,000 people extra on the voters list, it means the 200,000 people are going to vote. But what we found in 2020, at least 4,000 of them voted. 4,000 of them who were not supposed to vote, but the names were on the voters list, they voted. And they were not in Guyana, which means somebody voted for them. And that was the equivalent of 1 seat. We learned that through the recount. Although the recount was unconstitutional, that fact cannot be erased. That an unconstitutional act gave us a peek into how the PPP rigs. At least 1 seat. And I am very sure that if a real forensic audit went on in 2020, they would have discovered more impersonated votes. So the PPP intends to explore all ways of legally rigging an election. I'm using that term in quotes, legally rigging an election. You see, the court said that the bloated voters list, they can't do anything about it. So the court is saying it's not illegal. So we have a padded voters list, but it's not illegal. It's padded, but it's not illegal. So a party can siphon off 8,000, 10,000 of those 200,000 votes in a legal way. The National Assembly, the PPP used its majority to make it easy to get birth certificate. The president assented to the bill. It's now law that you can go and get a birth certificate like this. A birth certificate is a source document. That all you have to go and swear before a justice of peace that you are this person, you get a birth certificate. And we know that birth certificate is a source document for voting. So when we have all these immigrants coming into the country, that's a fertile pool of voters. We don't know how many. The other day, I think it was a Mansa or someone of the parliamentarians. We do not know how many citizenship, how many people have been granted Guyanese citizenship over the last couple of years. The government is not giving that figure. We don't know. We don't know who have been granted citizenship. And if you've been granted citizenship, it means you can vote. And the government is hiding that information. So, a good rigor is a rigor that looks at all the possibilities, illegal and legal. And since you have the majority in Parliament, in the National Assembly, you can make the illegal legal. By using your majority. So the PPP is busy rigging the system. If you rig the system, then rigging the election becomes easy because the system that you're using is rigged in your favor. That's what the PPP is doing. They know that they're likely to be caught with voter impersonation. Biometrics will catch them. And even without biometrics, the opposition is going to be much more vigilant as to who is going to come in to vote on that day. So the PPP will calculate that we are not likely to get very many votes via voter impersonation as we did the last time. So we have to find other ways of making up. When you hear politicians say we'll be in power for the next 40 years, take a hint. Take a hint. They're going to go aggressively in the African Guyanese community. They're not going to get very many votes. But because they go aggressively, they're going to say the extra votes we got is from African Guyanese. It's not from rigging. It's not from Venezuelans or Brazilians or Colombians. It's from African Guyanese. They have an elaborate strategy to rig the next election. That is why they took control of GCOM by criminalizing GCOM workers. They have taken control of GCOM from the CEO right down. And it is GCOM that will ultimately have to decide on an election. They've taken control of GCOM. You see, I'm not saying these things to dampen our spirits. I'm saying these things to be real because I notice sometimes some of our good friends and our supporters go off on this thing. Let's get the next election and we're going to vote them out. I want them to be voted out at the next election. But I don't want the next election to be a searching in the dark. There must be rules that would prevent any party from rigging. And that is our challenge. That is why we are asking for a fact-finding mission to come to Guyana. One is coming from the New York Assembly, state government, and we're asking for the federal government to send one, federal government of the USA. And we want them to come and to investigate human rights violations, but also investigate electoral violations. Those are the two planks that we have to work on: human rights and electoral. Human rights include racial discrimination, gender discrimination. Those people don't want anybody to come and peep in this country. Look at the story with the Doctors Without Borders, or what I think that's what they're called. Those people have been coming here. They're now preventing those people from coming. They do not want outside people to come here and to see behind the big buildings that are going up what actually is happening. And the overseas organizations, the organizations in Atlanta and Toronto and New York and Washington, those Guyanese organizations, I'm suggesting that you all should get together and send a fact-finding mission yourselves. So we're not asking just the Americans to send a fact-finding mission. The Guyanese organizations should come together and pass a resolution to send a fact-finding mission to your own country. Put it together. It doesn't have to be just Guyanese. You can get people from the Caribbean islands. But you Guyanese organizations are the ones who are sponsoring the fact-finding mission. And because they will say, well, you all are Guyanese, you all are biased, make the fact-finding mission include specialists, people who know what fact-finding missions do, include people from other countries. We should flood that place with fact-finding missions. We have serious work to do. That is why when Rickford Board took that initiative, it scared the hell out of them. Because they fear that what would happen as a result of that conference, there would be a domino of similar activities. So I'm challenging you Guyanese organizations. Even if you don't want to do it together, nothing that stops the Atlanta organization, Guyanese organization, to organize a fact-finding mission that includes non-Guyanese from Atlanta, from Georgia. And the same thing you all can do in New York and Washington. We have to get busy. We have to get busy. We can't be talking about an election as though the deal is done. We have to do work. Serious work. So your Guyanese organizations, I know you all still send barrels home and so on. That's good. People need that. But we also need other forms of action. I think the PPP is going to use money and get their supporters living overseas to go home and vote. Nothing illegal with that. I think the law says you have to be domiciled there. That will be a challenge. In the Caribbean islands, that's a big issue. The parties, they charter planes. The planes going in the morning, 3-4 plane load. People vote. And then the plane left in the afternoon. Because in many regards, they have the same problems like us. With these people on the voters list, but they're not living in the country. And they open the parties openly. Those of you who live in places like St. Kitts and I don't know if they still do it in Antigua. But in those islands, Grenada and those, they charter airplanes. And the PPP, I'm sure they're looking to do that. They may not charter planes, but they will pay for people to go into the country. It's not illegal. It's not illegal. It's cheating. It's rigging, but it's not illegal. So we have to begin to think strategically. And the reason they don't want us to have these programs is that we can talk about these things and educate ourselves as to the challenges before us. You see, a lot of times we are unfair to political parties. I mean, political parties need the blows that they're getting. I'm not saying that you all shouldn't blow them. But we expect the political parties to do everything. Political parties are generally in the business of raising money, fielding candidates, winning election and governing. That's where 90% of their energy, 95% of their energy go to. These are the things that we are talking about. Political parties generally don't pay attention to these things. So I understand political parties will be talking about election and crossover votes and all that stuff. But people like myself, we, the rest of us, we have to point out and work to stopping the rigging. And as I said, the rigging is going to be done illegally and legally. It is being done as we speak. As I point out, there's a trade-off. Immigrants are coming in. We don't know who are in those. There may be gang people. I'm sure they're gang members. They're intelligence people. All kinds of people are coming over our borders. And the government doesn't care because it sees a way to get a couple of seats from those people coming over the borders. But in getting a couple of seats, a lot of other things are coming over those borders. We are up against it. We are up against it, but we are equal to the task. Organize, join something, join an organization, form an organization. We have to keep organizing. We cannot leave everything to the political parties, to Aubrey Norton, to the parliamentarians. Yes, we should get the parliamentarians to do more. I always feel that opposition parliamentarians should be activists. Because you're not going to win much in the parliament. You're not going to get bills passed in the parliament, the National Assembly. So you should become activists. But I'm saying we cannot leave everything to the political parties and Aubrey Norton and so on. Organize ourselves. Organize ourselves. Dr. Hines, not too many of them from Richmond Hill and Ozone Park wouldn't make the trip to vote. Those sections of the diaspora are riddled with illegal. So leaving the US would be a disaster for some of them. Yeah, I agree with you, my brother. But there is still enough of them to give them a seat. You see, all you need is a seat or two. And I mean, this buying of black votes is something that we should not give up on by the PPP. Because if you buy 25 votes from each black community, that could come up to half a seat, 3/4 of a seat. You notice they start a new round of what they call outreach to black community. Going into black community to empower black communities. They're not interested in that. They're interested in turning black people into hustlers. Because if you turn young black people into hustlers, hustlers don't have time to vote and politics. You hustle a dollar. And that's what the PPP is doing, trying to do with our young people, to turn them into hustlers. Every hustler you create in the black community is one vote less for the opposition. So these people are working overtime. So, as you all know, I don't use that term, take their money and vote against them. Of course, you have to take the resources with the understanding that it's not their resource, it's your resource. But if you take the money believing it's they giving you the money, then you take that money with the mindset that they're doing you a favor and they're turning you into hustlers. And like I said, all they have to do is to turn 3,000 young black people into hustlers. That's half a seat. They turn 5,000 young black people. That's 5,000 who are not going to vote. That's a seat. We're going to spend a lot of time on this program showing you all the ways how legal rigging is going on. And that we have to combat them. All the nourishment that we are getting on these programs, we have to share this nourishment, especially with young people. Share the programs. Share them with your little cousins and so on. And because those young people are being targeted. And we are saying, well, they're not going to vote PPP. Well, that's true. But a lot of them will not vote. Will not vote. And everyone them not vote is a vote against the opposition. So there is all kinds of serious work to be done. And we have to spread the word and do the work. I want you all, those of you all who have organizations, think very seriously about my proposal to send fact-finding missions. It would be nice if the organizations in the various centers, Atlanta, Washington, Toronto, New York, if you all can get together and sponsor one fact-finding mission. But even if you're not able to do that, in your own individual capacity, mount these fact-finding missions and send them there. Flood the place. I thank all of you for the support that you all have given. So many of you have reached out to me privately and thank me and others for what we do. Thanks to all of you who felt that my comments at the conference in Washington made a difference to the deliberations. Thank you very much. I'm humbled. I'm humbled. It makes a difference when we hear from our people that they big us up sometimes, because sometimes it's difficult to wake up in the morning and say, let me start all over again. Thank you, God, for sparing my life. And here I start all over again. Sometimes it's difficult because we are human beings. But inspiration from you, our people, keep us going. And we hope that we inspire you to get up in the morning and say, let me continue with this struggle for another day. We have to see politics as more than just the obvious. We have to see politics as more than just the obvious. Exxon is saying 11,000 barrels of oil. The government is saying 24 million barrels of oil, sorry. Professor Clive Thomas puts it at 25, what am I saying, billion barrels of oil. So there's wealth. Despite all the talk about how we are being cheated, and we are being cheated by the big companies. But if we pay all of our attention to what we are being cheated of by the big companies and pay little attention to how our own government is cheating us, then we're not making any progress. We have to tackle this thing on all fronts. On all fronts. all fronts. I'm trying to get the someone of the parliamentarians to come here and for us to talk about this oversight of the spending and the refusal of the government to meet in the Public Accounts Committee. And to hear from them what their plans are. They are the people who are there. And we have to help to lift them up. So I'm going to try to get one of them or two of them to come on here before the end of the week. So we have homework to do. We have homework to do. Organize yourself. I saw somebody here from Tennessee. I think his brother Charles is from Tennessee. We are all over the place. All over the place. All over the place. And we have to take advantage. We have to take advantage of our situation and use it to our advantage. Good night. It's night now in Guyana, New York, and other places. It's morning in England and other parts of Europe. Thanks for joining us. Tomorrow, I'll be back again, as they say, bright and early.